Hello and welcome to Beyond Business, the program where we look at competition in the global economy. Do you know there are more than 6,000 languages worldwide? And you also know around half of them are at risk of disappearing before the end of this century. Many smaller languages are simply having a hard time to compete against bigger rivals. This map from the UN body UNESCO tells the story. Each dot represents a language under threat. Their classification ranges from vulnerable to critically endangered, and some are no longer in use. As you can see, it's a worldwide problem. Look at North America and Australia, for example. English is dominant there, and it is squeezing out other languages. Now, the extinction of a language isn't only seen as a cultural loss. It could also have an economic impact, and we'll have more of that in a moment. First, though, we're heading off to Ireland for a look at the efforts on the Emerald Isle to preserve a language under threat.
The
language of the O'Brenoin family is threatened with extinction. Irish is among 3,000 languages at risk, according to the UN, but it's managed to survive so far, particularly in the county of Galway on the west coast of Ireland. For the O'Brenoins, the Irish language isn't just a relic of folklore, it's their main mode of communication.
We use the Irish language, or Gaelic, or Gaeilge, as our main language in this family, and it's also the main language in our community. So we don't think about why we use it because we use it all the time and it's the natural thing for us. In fact, it's unusual for us to have English language spoken in our house.
Out of a population of just over 4.5 million, under half speak the language at all, and far fewer on a daily basis.
77,000 people speak it daily outside the educational system, and that another 100,000, just over 110,000 people speak the language on a weekly basis outside the educational system.
That's 2% of the population, but it hasn't dampened support for programs that aim to protect the language.
We live in a democratic system. We have opinion poll after opinion poll that demonstrates the opinion of the Irish people is that the Irish language is a worthwhile thing to protect.
Protected against English, which is the dominant language in Ireland and has helped to eclipse countless local tongues all over the world, including Irish, which was spoken by the majority of the population until the 19th century, when it began a long decline. Then government introduced specialist schools to save the language. All of the courses are taught in Irish, and English is one subject among many. It's the opposite of regular schools, which nevertheless make Irish a mandatory subject for entry into university. There are moves to improve the way it's taught in these schools. It's among the priorities of Young Fine Gael, the youth wing of a political party whose name translates as the Clan of Celts.
We think that the focus of the language and of the teaching of the language should be on oral and oral learning. So give people the ability to speak and to be able to understand the language instead of just learning off essays and vocabulary by heart, which is the way that it is taught nowadays in secondary schools.
For reasons of identity, culture and history, the Irish language is particularly important, but at what cost?
Michael D. Higgins, the Department of Education reckoned that in the region of 500 million would be spent annually on the teaching of Irish in our schools.
€500 million, the kind of sum that prompts critics to question the costly enterprise, such as Edward Walsh, who decries government waste.
The taxpayers' money, it's considerable. It's just in education we spend 570 million a year. And what is the result? Hardly anyone speaks the language. It's the household language for 3% of the population, and they're only 1% of the population, 1 in 100, it's their native language. So it is unfortunately a waste of money at present. Now, different policies could be used and considerably less funding spent to focus on the small number of people who really wish to become fluent in the language.
Such as the members of Gael Tuca. It's a group based in Cork in the south of Ireland. which aims to expand the use of Irish through radio shows, articles and courses, and even prizes. Cafe owner Caroline Murphy is a past winner of the prize.
So there's different ways we promote the Irish language. We put it in our menus, put it in the back of menus, we speak Irish with our customers, and any flyers or promotionals, we always do everything in Irish and in English.
That's an effective marketing tool. No better way to say that it's made in Ireland than when it's said in Irish.
Obviously, it is good marketing, and if there were two places to choose from, I would naturally try and encourage a place that will encourage Irish language.
That boosts tourism, and it's a boon for employment, in teaching, translating, in schools, offices, and in the media, as is the case in Galway, in the Connemara. The television channel TG4 broadcasts shows in Irish all over the country, with English subtitles.
We have created a new industry, if you like. We employ about 350 people, full-time people making programs. So therefore, it is an industry. It is an industry that needs to keep changing constantly with the business.
Rolling up, Cuna Salmon, Otcana Laredell.
About 90% of the money that we get in from the government goes back out again to independent production companies totally across Ireland, the 32 counties of Ireland, to make our programmes. So the money is actually going back into the regions again and is creating very much needed employment in today's economic climate.
So, against the threat of globalisation and English domination, the Irish language enjoys a robust defence to preserve what remains of Ireland's rich cultural diversity.
Okay, a look there at how Ireland is trying to preserve Irish. And for more on what the loss of a language would actually mean, we spoke to linguist Nicholas Evans. He's the author of the book Dying Words. He says humanity will lose out not only culturally, but also economically by the loss of a language. We asked him specifically why he thinks a language spoken by only a handful of people should be kept alive.
With regard to the value of the language itself as a vehicle of ideas. If we see people in remote villages in Northern Australia or in Papua New Guinea or in Africa as being nothing more than future factory workers or possibly future call centre workers, yes, they will be at a disadvantage. It will be a longer road for them to travel in order to be able to take calls in a call centre or work in a factory in English or French or Mandarin or whatever it may be. But if we see their economic future as lying more in where they are, what they know, what their expertise is, namely the management of the forest or ecological resources, which they and their ancestors have explored and utilised for centuries, for millennia, then again the problem looks very different. It's them who have the expert knowledge, them who may know about valuable tree species, for example, that Western science doesn't yet know about. So if we have a more interesting conception of economic futures, which is much more diversified, much more localised, then a lot of these pseudo-conflicts will disappear.
Let's delve deeper into the treasures that may literally lie hidden in different languages. Nicholas Evans also told us about one people and one language in Mexico that alerted scientists to a potential asset on the ocean floor. Without the preservation of the Seri language, this knowledge may have been lost forever.
These are observations of the natural world made by a particular ethnic group, by speakers of a particular language over centuries or millennia. People who had to survive, and in the case of the Seri, for example, they were living in desert conditions. It's not easy to find things to eat in that situation. So they carefully studied the movements of birds, which would come every season, dive down into the sea, and feast themselves on these submarine grass, and the Seri people learned to prepare them and harvest them. It's potentially an important food resource for humanity into the future as we face a crisis of arable land, and we have sea out there which maybe we will be able to harness, thanks to their observation, thanks to their science. And I want to stress that this wasn't known before a dialogue occurred between anthropological linguists and Merciless people, which brought this out and eventually led to it being published in scientific journals. But it wasn't known to Western or world science before that.
That brings us to the end of this Beyond Business. Before we go, I just want to leave you with this reflection. You've probably heard of the story of the Tower of Babel. The myth is that God punished mankind by giving us different languages. But maybe, just maybe, we should look at our different languages as an asset instead. On behalf of the entire team, thanks for watching, and do stay with us for more news right here on France 24.